I am eating my words on Wednesday night, and yet I am out of words to describe what Mark Adams is doing at Texas Tech right now. The Red Raiders sweep Baylor for the first time in 17 years. We're going to talk about how they did it coming up on today's Locked On Texas Tech.
You are Locked On Texas Tech, your daily podcast on the Texas Tech Red Raiders, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On Texas Tech, a member of the Locked On Podcast Network. Thanks for making Locked On Texas Tech your first listen every day. We are free and available on all platforms. I'm Ryan Mainville. I cover Texas Tech for the Dallas Morning News. And right now, my mentions are an absolute dumpster fire because I have already been mentioned by multiple people asking me to walk back my very bad take from yesterday's preview episode, which was I thought Baylor was going to win this game. I admittedly did not feel good about it. I mentioned that it would be a very close game, and yet here I am eating my words once again. And I think I've come to the conclusion that I'm never going to pick against Texas Tech again this season. But before we get into any of the reason as to why, I haven't even introduced my co-host yet. I'm joined by my buddy Emery Lida, a longtime Texas Tech analyst, writer, and podcaster who does not look like a fool tonight because he picked Texas Tech to win this game. Emery, what did you see that I didn't? And just what's your initial feeling? I mean, we're recording this at 10:34 my time on Wednesday night. So this game is very fresh on both of our minds. How did Texas Tech do it?
Well, for one, I mean, at this point, I'm not picking Tech to lose a home game until they actually lose a home game. And if that's 3 years down the line, then that's 3 years down the line, but I'll deal with it then. But in terms of this game, I mean, it was a tale of two halves. The first half, Baylor came out like a hungry team, a team that had just come off absolutely stomping UT. And really, just in the second half, Tech started to get shots to fall down. Obviously, Kevin Obanor had probably the game of his season, and in terms of one half, probably the best half of his career in the second half. So that really just went down, and we'll talk about his performance later. But I mean, every single thing that could go right for Tech went right in the second half. And I think you've got to say, like, the effort that this team showed was absolutely incredible. And to be able to sweep a team that's as good as this year's Baylor's team and do it really in both games missing guys. I mean, in game one, you were missing TJ Shannon. You had Kevin McCullough basically on one leg. In this game, you were missing Kevin McCullough. You had to deal with a little bit of foul trouble. And just in general, I mean, being able to pull this one out, it was phenomenal. I picked Tech to win this, but I did not expect it to come in the fashion of really kind of blowing the game open late. And obviously Baylor had a little bit of a scary run there at the end, but for the most part, Tech just completely controlled the second half. And I mean, I didn't see that coming. I thought it was going to be one of those close games where flip a coin and hopefully the USA Magic comes alive and makes a difference in this one. But thankfully it was pretty straightforward, and I mean, just a lot to like about this. I mean, you can talk about the offense putting up over 80 again, which seemed just incredibly difficult considering what I mentioned yesterday and the fact that Baylor had only allowed Tech to score 60 points the last two home games. So it's incredible, man. I could go on for hours just talking about random stuff, but at the end of the day, this was a monumental win, and really one that, as good as Tech has been the last few years, we've yet to see them really sweep an opponent as good as what Baylor is this year. So absolutely phenomenal.
And I don't want to walk my take back. I mean, like I meant what I meant, and I said it. You know, I didn't feel great about it, but I did feel like Texas Tech was just in a difficult position to win this game. I mean, Baylor is good, man. They're a really good team. And so I don't want it to sound like I'm about to walk it back. Also, thank you very much to all of our very faithful listeners that are calling me out on my bad take right now. But this isn't compensation. This is just the truth. I think Texas Tech is the best team in the country right now. Like I can't justify otherwise in my head right now. In terms of what I've seen from this team, the depth, the versatility, the length, the defense, the coaching, the ability for Mark Adams to like put an entirely different team out on the court in the second half compared to the first half is unlike anything I've seen. They've been inconsistent, yet they've been able to win games even when it's difficult. They've battled injuries. They find nights where they score 83 on offense against Baylor. I just, man, I think this is the best team in the country right now, and I know that'll be labeled as, firsthand bias, Texas Tech bias, but I just feel that right now. I really do think this is the best team in the country.
Put it to you this way. If Tech can make 30% of their three-point shots and not completely collapse offensively on the road, I'll agree with you. Because what we saw tonight and what we've seen in general at home over the last couple of months is far and away one of the best teams in the nation. I think easily the best team in the Big 12. And I mean, if they can put it together for a full 18-game slate, I am absolutely comfortable saying this is the best team in the country because to me, Baylor with all three of their guards playing and with the perimeter guys that they have, with Sochin and Brown both being really good wing players, being able to hang more than 80 points on them and do so really with kind of an off-shooting first half, it's ridiculous. And that really answered a lot of questions about the offense. Certainly defensively, I mean, you're never going to doubt this Tech team. I mean, even though it seemed like Baylor was reining in whatever shots they wanted to, Adam Flagler had a couple of really ridiculous shots in this one. And even then, you did enough to keep them at bay. And sure, people say, oh, they were missing JTT. But the thing is, JTT really doesn't do a ton offensively. And if anything, being able to run 5-out lineups like they did in the first half kind of looked like it gave Tech some fits. And you were still able to overcome it. And like you mentioned, Mark Adams being able to field basically two different teams between halves is just ridiculous. Like some of the on-the-fly adjustments. Like I never thought at the start of conference play I would see a lineup with Adonis Arms, TJ Shannon, Chibuzo Agbo, Bryson Williams, and Kevin Obanor, and it worked. It worked against a team that ran basically 3 to 4 guards at all times. And like the ability for that to work just blows my mind. It's something that I have not seen a team with this much versatility in a long time because Tech can go, they can run small, they can run the two big lineup, they can run two guards in Clarence and Malik that are really good on and off ball pass defensively. They can run 3 wings at a time. Like there's so much that they can do, and it's crazy to watch this team play. And I mean, I don't know if they're the best team in the country, but on nights like tonight, they sure act like it. So great, absolutely great to see.
And I mean, just the swing. Like, I just want to keep going back to this and talking about the first half to second half swing because it truly was unlike anything I've seen in a long, long while. First half, Texas Tech goes 8 of 24 from the field. Baylor goes 14 to 28. They're making everything from deep. Red Raiders go 2 of 9 from deep. They're obviously not. I think the big thing for Texas Tech in that first half was the ability to continually get to the free throw line. I thought that really, really saved them in this game. Like, really, I think that was the turning point. If they don't make their free throws in that first half, we're not talking about a win right now. And so kudos to them for staying focused and not getting inside their heads in that first half. And then, I mean, to end plus 17 in the second half of this game is just absurd. Texas Tech finished 18 of 32 in the second half, 5 of 12 from deep, 10 of 12 from the line. Kevin Obanor had 21 points. Baylor had 34 in that second half. So, I mean, just a monumental performance, just season defining, and really every aspect of what that means. I mean, I understand the hesitancy of not calling Texas Tech the best team in the nation. Like, man, you're more than entitled to your own opinion, and I understand that you watch a lot of college ball. But to anybody that doesn't think Texas Tech is a national contender right now, you're not watching
Out of
this
your
team.
mind.
You're not watching this team.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, at this point, it's ridiculous to think that Tech isn't one of the top 10 teams in the nation and a real Final Four contender. Anything less than that, I think you're just being way too conservative. I mean, at this point, you can't name 5 better teams in the nation. I think that the only thing that holds Tech back is sometimes you have the offensive inconsistencies, but even then, against ranked teams, it's been absolutely the offense has been phenomenal. Like you're talking about in each of the ranked versus ranked games dating back to the first Iowa State game, which is the only anomaly when you only had 7 players. Every game since then against a ranked team, you've been able to have at least 39 points in one half. And 39 points with the pace that Tech plays is a really good half. And you've seen it. You've had 50-point halves against Baylor. You've had a 45-point half against Kansas and Allen Fieldhouse. You've put together a really good first half against Texas. Like, there have been halves where this team just looks straight up unbeatable, and that is a scary sight to see, because that's the kind of thing when you get onto the big stage, when you start playing these top-tier teams, being able to have those monumental halves in you and those outright swings, that's something that wins you championships, and that's going to make the difference against teams that are really good, like a Baylor, like a Gonzaga, like a Kansas, or like a Purdue.
There's so much to like, man. I could talk about this team for an entire episode, but we've got to get into our individual players, and there is a guy that is more than deserving of a few minutes of our time. First, a word from our sponsors. Football might be over for this season, but basketball is in full steam, as you can tell, for both pro and college hoops. From all the latest odds, totals, player performance props, to even where the next fired coach is going to land, BetOnline.net is the #1 spot for all your sports betting needs. BetOnline remains the best spot for all your sports scores, podcasts, and news this season. And it's not just basketball. BetOnline.net is your source for hockey, boxing, and UFC odds, right to the Olympics coverage and information. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more about the trends in action. BetOnline, where the game starts. Thanks for making Locked On Texas Tech your first listen every day. This is the segment of the show, or our recap shows, where we usually talk about some of the noteworthy individual performances, specifically on the Texas Tech end. But I'm going to have a hard time talking about anybody but Kevin Obanor for the next 8 minutes. Man, what a night. Just what a night all around. 2 points in the first half. Both of them coming from the line. Played 12 minutes. 0 for 4 from the field. Second half, 21 points. 8 of 9 from the field. 4 of 5 from deep. 5 offensive boards. 9 boards total. Played 17 minutes. I just, man, this dude is so good. Like, there have been points this season where he's been in a shooting slump, and he came into this game in a little bit of one. But he's been able to provide value for this team consistently underneath the basket. And in this game, he did that, but he also made 4 of 5 shots from deep in the second half. And when he is a player that is able to space the floor and yet get to the basket, like when Baylor put in that zone, I was thinking this is going to freeze Texas Tech, because it's done that to them at a few different points throughout the season. Texas Tech has just traditionally struggled against the zone. They found him in the corner. He made a shot. They found him in the corner. He put the ball down. He got to the basket. Probably should have gotten a foul. Like, I don't know what we're seeing right now. This is an offensive player that Texas Tech has not had ever. Like, just his just in terms of his pure prototype. Like, this dude does not fit into a box of a player that we see very often. And tonight was just remarkable, man. A really, really good performance. And Texas Tech does not win this game without Kevin Obanor.
All right. I'm going to spend my first 20-ish seconds on the Obanor topic by giving a little bit of credit to the ball handlers for Tech, because I will say that one of the keys in the second half were guys were doing a better job of keeping their heads up. And I think you saw the couple of rotation threes. One of them was off of a nice pass from Clarence. And if I remember correctly, TJ had a couple of good assists as well. And I think that's
the skip pass to the corner by TJ was one of the best plays I think he's made this entire season.
Oh, yeah. TJ was phenomenal. But enough of that. The passes really helped in terms of getting him in rhythm. But Kevin Obanor, what a guy. I mean, he had missed 13 straight threes from the last 2 that he took in the Texas game. The last 3 games, he went 0 of 9, and he missed the first 2 in the first half of this game. In the first 14 minutes of the half, he made 4 straight, 4 of 4. And just ridiculous shooting from him. You're talking about a guy that, Ed Oral Roberts, we saw games like this. We saw where he could get hot. But this was against a top 15 team in the nation, a team that, in theory, has the personnel that matches up well against a player like Obanor because of the speed of their wings and ability to close out. and he was unstoppable. There were a couple of real contested shots he was able to hit, and his decision making in the second half was on point as well. I mean, we've seen at times where he struggled when he's put the ball on the floor, but when they were over closing out after he hit the first couple of threes, he was able to get to the rim. And more than that, even when it wasn't there, he was dishing it a little bit. And while he only ended up with 1 assist, his ability to kind of pass out of that, relocate, get a better look, like those are skills that you just don't see very often. You see the gravity that he has. Like if you want to look at the zone defense that Baylor ran, it was a smart play in theory because it's something that Tech has struggled with at times this season. It's something where in the first half Tech could not buy a three. You really didn't have that much playmaking on the floor in theory, and it didn't work. And it didn't work in large part because Obanor, A, just commanded so much gravity out from beyond the three-point line, and B, made so many good decisions when he was getting all that attention. And so, I mean, to me, the 21 points obviously is phenomenal, but I don't think it even does him enough justice because he was everywhere on the offensive glass. He was making great decisions. He was hitting three-pointers. Like, this was probably the most complete half I've ever seen of him, whether it be on tape, on some of the stuff I watched at Oral Roberts, or any of the games from this year. And I mean, to have a player like this that is capable of going off, and I know we haven't seen the shot all that much. We've seen the struggles, but he was due for a game like this. I don't think it would come with this amount of extra stuff in addition to the shooting. But man, I mean, when you've got Kevin Obanor capable of putting those performances in, sky's the limit. You can get anything done on offense with this team.
Well, like the main concern or the main storyline for this team the entire season has been what happens when they make shots. At least that's what I've continually repeated on this podcast. Like, what happens if they start making shots? Texas from the free throw line and has not been consistent from deep. So what happens when Texas Tech starts making shots? And a prime candidate to do that is obviously Kevin Obanor. And I mean, man, just 4-7 from deep again. Had a great night on the glass. I think that's an aspect where he just continues to do really, really good work. But his first double-double as a Red Raider, obviously my player of the game. I feel like that didn't even really need to be stated. But a number of other Texas Tech players had really good nights. We've got to touch on them because this win is truly by committee. Kevin Obanor, his performance really turned the tide for Texas Tech in that second half, but a ton of Red Raiders contributed in very noticeable ways tonight. Thought TJ was terrific tonight, maybe one of the best games he's played all season, had 14 points, 5 assists and 1 turnover. The playmaking ability was there tonight. I don't even know if that one to Obanor in the corner counted because Obanor lost possession for a second, so I'm not even sure that counted as an assist, but his playmaking tonight was noticeably good, and he got to the rim efficiently. It just feels like that early season TJ that we saw that was being aggressive with the ball in his hands is here.
Yeah, I mean, the playmaking, we saw it in the TCU game as well. And even though the assist number wasn't what it probably should have been in that one, we saw the aggressiveness. We saw he was finding skip passes and he was making the right decision. I think that's something that really has come alive the last couple of games is his half-court decision-making looks so good. And it allows you to run those sorts of lineups that we saw to close the second half because when he's able to make good decisions and operate as a primary ball handler, then you're no longer looking at a lineup that can't really run a half-court offense. And just having TJ's patience out there, I think his ability to make those processing passes and do so in a quicker manner is something that we saw him do early on in the season, particularly when he first came in against Incarnate Word and even some in the Providence game. I felt like that was a strength of his, and then got hurt, kind of didn't see it much again until the last couple of games, but it's such a weapon. And to end up with 5 assists and to do so really on a night where a lot of shots on the perimeter weren't necessarily falling for Tech in the first half, and in the second half, like a lot of Obanor's looks came off of spot ups and from passes from other guys. For him to end up with 5 assists and only doing it as a primary ball handler for a few minutes is very impressive. And I think his passing's really been an underlooked aspect of his game this year that's improved because the stats don't necessarily bear it out, but you look at the responsibility he's been given and the fact that, like, one of the plays that he had a wide open lane to dunk where he passed up, he rejected the ball screen. That's one of those things that it's a high level play. It's kind of subtle in his decision making, but old TJ would not have been capable of kind of making that split-second decision, looking at the leverage of Akinjo and being able to recognize the open lane. And so for him to be able to do that, I'm really encouraged by how his game's evolved over the last couple of games.
And that play, his basketball IQ was it was so brilliant because even then he got to go left, which is his strong side. So in turn, like he's processing all these things on the court with the ball in his hands, man. He's just such a smart player. So exciting to watch. We got to go quick here. A couple of other players that stood out to me. Bryson Williams, I thought was really good. Obviously, just continues to be a reliable source of offense from this team, even when he's not stretching the floor. Thought Adonis Arms had a great night from the free throw line. Struggled a bit with his playmaking and not turning the ball over, but definitely contributed some good minutes to this team, especially on the defensive end. And I'm going to close my end with a little nod to the Buzo Hive that is absolutely buzzing tonight because Buzo played 8 minutes in this game, all of them in the second half, and it really felt like that lineup just completely changed the tide of the second half. Obviously, you've got crazy stat lines in this box score, but thought Buzo played some really good defense tonight, and then made a really good play to not only make the shot against Baylor's zone, but he got himself to the middle of the floor, right on the edge of that free throw line, and made a shot that's exactly where you need to be to break the zone. Thought that was a really good play from him tonight.
Yeah, I mean, I think Buzo's off-ball movement and ability to be in the right place is something that is kind of a real subtle strength of his, and we don't really see it play out often because a lot of times he's playing in lineups that don't really have a lot of spacing or really aren't really relevant. But I mean, that play and just in general, him being able to operate the middle of the zone was something I felt like he did a good job of, and to be able to play 8 minutes, closing out a top 10 team, man, it's great for the brand, I must say. And then I'll give a nod to another member of the brand in Claire Sadonli having 3 steals. Thought he maybe played a little bit rough as a ball handler, but the off-ball intensity is there, and it was really important against Baylor. And then Marcus Santos Silva had a nice game again, being able to switch on the Baylor guards. I think that it was kind of overshadowed by what the rest of Tech's bigs did and kind of what Shannon and Arms and them were able to do offensively. But that switching ability is really important. And I feel like it's been paying dividends against these teams like Kansas and Baylor with a lot of ball handlers. And in this one, it allowed Tech to play big and not get absolutely torched like they were.
Yeah, he like Marcus barely even played in that second half too, which makes his game a lot more noticeable and impressive because he got into foul trouble really quick in that second half. He picked up like I think it was back-to-back possessions where he got a foul call, so that was a little rough. But man, what a night for Texas Tech. We're gonna have a word from our sponsors real quick, but after that, just want to continue to talk about this win and what it means. Texas Tech, big win over Baylor, 10-point win at the USA. Red Raiders sweep Baylor for the first time in 17 years. It's just there's so much here to talk about and to look at and to consider. I mean, we are just continuing, or at least I am continuing to be surprised by this Texas Tech team and who they really are. Because there's never really been a doubt in my mind throughout the course of this season that this is a good team and that this is going to be a good team. But just like looking over just like the historical basketball reference page, like when you were talking last, I had the tab open and like this is going to be the first time or the third time that they finished a season with 20 or more wins since like 2007. And they've still got a handful of games left to play. They've matched their conference record the past 2 years. Still plenty of Big 12 games to play as well. It just like, is there any doubt in your mind right now that Mark Adams is Coach of the Year?
Oh, in the Big 12, he's 100% Coach of the Year. I think nationally it's all going to come down to posturing and kind of who ends the season well and whatnot. But certainly, I mean, I'd have him as Coach of the Year nationally. I think you could say Ed Cooley at Providence has done a remarkable job getting them into the top 10. You could say Bruce Pearl, obviously, what he's done in Auburn. I think he's had a lot of help in terms of the amount of talent they've brought in. But I mean, if you don't have Mark Adams in your short list for Coach of the Year, I don't know what you're doing, especially if you're a Texas Tech fan or a Big 12 fan. I mean, to not be able to see what he's been doing, it's incredible. And it's not like this was a team that was all the way well put together in November or December. I mean, we saw the early part of the season. It's easy to look back on now, but you saw games against North Florida or Grambling or whatever where Tech genuinely struggled to close out from 3. and you saw against Providence kind of collapse against the zone. And then suddenly it's just like now everything's been put together and this is a remarkable team. And I'm not saying that they're not going to lose again. I think that you obviously have a lot of variance in basketball, but to be able to put on a show like tonight and it not be a fluke. I mean, this is something Tech has done now 3 times, winning against top 10 teams. You've been over 500 against those sorts of matchups. You've been winning these games and doing so really in a fashion where none of them have come down to the last second. None of them have looked like it was potentially going to be out of your control. And to be able to have those sorts of wins, it's incredible. And I mean, you're talking about a team, if Tech closes out Kansas and Allen Fieldhouse and doesn't have Agbaji hit a ridiculous 3, this is a top 5 team already. And this is a team that would have swept both Kansas and Baylor, which in this year's Big 12 is ridiculous. So this team never ceases to amaze me. Mark Adams is definitely Big 12 Coach of the Year, has a good argument for National Coach of the Year. And at this point, we're all along for the ride just to see what this team can continue to do.
I've been enjoying watching Providence this season. Ever since Texas Tech played them, they were just a team that was really interesting to me and a team that I would have, like, I've just been enjoying watching their games whenever I'm just sitting around the house. And I probably would have had Cooley as probably Coach of the Year if Providence would have beat Villanova on Tuesday night, but they didn't. And I think right now my clear-cut choice is Mark Adams. But awards are awards, man. They just go on a shelf. What Mark Adams has been able to do this season and just continues to do is unbelievable. With even from this offseason where he put together a roster that so clearly fits at every single level in terms of talent and personality and on-court fit and just demeanor. Like, this team is so unselfish. It doesn't feel like there's conflicting personalities. It doesn't feel like any guy is trying to make themselves the star. These dudes just want to win, and it comes out so clearly. And that like, I really know that both you and I really hate, like, talking about this and this subject, but, like, that's something that's very reminiscent of 18-19. Was like, everybody knew that Jarrett Culver was the best player on the floor, but it didn't always look like it because Culver was passing the ball to other players, and it didn't really feel like Culver was demanding shots or getting himself into ISO situations wherever he was making bad decisions. I just, like, that team had a personality, it had a culture to it that is really, really rare in college basketball. And my soapbox right now is, I guess, that this team has a similar feel. I'm not saying that they're going to be in the national championship in a month, but I do think that they have a really, really good head on their shoulders as a team. But let's focus on Texas Tech right now, where they're at. Red Raiders have 5 games left on their schedule: at Texas, OU at home, at TCU, K-State, at Oklahoma State, in Stillwater to close the season. Emory, I'm going to put you on the spot here. What is Texas Tech's record at the end of the season in these final 5 games?
I'm going to go 23-8, 12-6 in conference. I think they drop 1 game. I'm not sure which, but I mean, as much of a high as tonight is, the Big 12 is still going to be a grind. And you're going to be facing 3 teams that are fighting for their tournament lives over the next few weeks. And you've got Oklahoma State that's going to be trying to end their season on a high. So I think the odds of being able to make it through all of those games without making a single mistake and dropping one of them is pretty slim. But with that said, I mean, you're still in a really good spot, even if you drop one of those games. And I mean, I think you're going to learn a lot about this team going into Austin in a couple of days, but certainly, I mean, I'm going to go ahead and give a spoiler. I'm picking Tech to win that game. I think that there's no reason not to. And from there, you're just facing off against desperate teams. You might get unlucky on one night, but I don't think it should deter you from what the potential of this team is and what they've already accomplished so far.
Yeah, I'm going to go 4-1, similar to you, just because, like, what would that be? A 7-game win streak to end conference play in the Big 12? That's nuts, man. I mean, that's 18-19 team territory that we're talking about there, with that kind of run to close your season. Like, those are impressive, difficult runs to pull off. And I'm with you. I'm actually with you. I'll take a floater on one of these games. I don't think it'll be Oklahoma or Kansas State at home, just because the USA has a finally taught me a lesson and shown me that I should not pick against it. TCU in Fort Worth kind of worries me. I know that like I've talked way too much about TCU this season, but that's a game that I'll be watching a little intently. I don't really fear Oklahoma State and just what I'm seeing from them this season. And I'm with you. I think Tech is going to beat Texas in Austin on Saturday, but that's where all the attention shifts now, is obviously to preparing for that game, to getting energized for that game, and to just focus for all the Red Raider fans to just yell as loud as they can on Saturday. I'm really, really excited to see what the atmosphere looks like in Austin come this weekend. But before then, we will have plenty of coverage to keep you informed and updated and just up to speed on what that game will look like for the Red Raiders, who will be playing, what our predictions are, what our keys to the game are. Be sure that you are locked on to Locked On Texas Tech. You can follow us on Twitter. You can follow me at rmainvillelbk. You can follow Emery at eracer41, and you can follow the official Locked On Texas Tech Twitter page at Locked On TTU. Be sure to subscribe to us on YouTube if you have not already. It is a big, big boost to our audience base, and we would really appreciate you doing so. Reach out if there's anything in the episode that sounded weird or that you didn't like, or if you just want to hop in my mentions and give me a hard time. I appreciate it, and I really appreciate your listenership. And man, what a great time to be a Tech fan. All are having a time for making Locked On Texas Tech your first listen every day. Be sure to make second listen Locked On Bets, your daily one-stop shop for all your gambling needs. Locked On Bets, hosted by your boy Q, with expert analysis and insight from Lee Sterling. It's free and available on all platforms. Thank you for